Hi, I'm Ryan Shepard, and today my presentation is going to be about how American popular music has misappropriated American Indian culture. And first, we're going to be talking about a couple topics that define how American popular music has misappropriated Indian culture. First, we're going to define what singing red face is. And singing red face is the non-native person takes on the racial archetype of a Native American person and character through song. This is basically mocking the racial slurs that are seen, and they are figuratively and literally dressing up as Indians. And there are a few examples of singing red face, and some of the most popular forms were in song. And one prime example was the song by Tim McGraw, Indian Outlaw, and he basically took words by saying that like he is part Cherokee, part Choctaw, and his girlfriend was Chippewa. And so he is claiming the culture as his own when he is obviously not of Native American. And this is also seen in everyday media with lyrics, music, album covers, and music videos. And then this was also similar to the blackface minstrelsy phase, and like what blackface really is. And blackface minstrelsy was like displaying blackness in performances. And this is where like white Northerners really explored their curiosity about African American culture when slavery was a national topic. And the performances included white males becoming black. And this proved to white Americans that it was a safe, unthreatening, and mostly imaginary form. And it looked into African American culture. They mocked the languages. They glorified slavery in these performances of blackface minstrelsy. And blackface was one of the most popular topics in entertainment back when slavery was glorified. And some of the songs that I found from the textbook that really glorified this were the songs My Old Kentucky Home and Oh Susanna. I used to sing Oh Susanna as a child with my family and not knowing any context behind it, but now that I have gone back and done more information about it, I can now see how this was very racist and not empathetic, for lack of better wordings. And so also back to how American popular music has misappropriated American Indian culture was by playing Indian. And playing Indian is just basically a non-native person becoming Indian. It is portrayed in many American stories, and this is seen from a few examples. Growing up, most of us probably watched the movie Peter Pan, and this was a prime example because the kids dressed up in headdresses and pretended to be Indians, as seen here. This is Peter Pan with a headdress on. The song, this was taken from the song What Makes the Red Man Red. And also, when I was reading this in the textbook, I immediately thought back to when I was a kid. I used to be obsessed with watching Scooby-Doo, and there was an episode where Scooby put on a headdress and the whole episode was based on how the Indians were savages and villains and they needed to be stopped. And so playing Indian was how non-natives dressed up as natives, and they took the identity of a native. So racial antipathy was also a topic that really misappropriated American Indian culture. And this was the strong dislike, opposition, or anger toward that ethnicity. And this was seen in old Western times that the Indians were placed as savages, and they were a group of unsophisticated or barbarous raiders that attacked the stagecoaches on horseback. And the racial agenda that American Indians were villains and they needed to be stopped. And this was seen in that episode of Scooby-Doo. And I also put the picture of Scooby dressed in the headdress, and I'm pretty sure he was holding a weapon. And then this was the picture of the Native American that they portrayed as a villain. Also, cultural misappropriation itself is a large part of how American music, popular American music, misappropriated Indian culture. And cultural misappropriation is the intentional theft of tangible cultural commodities by an outsider who has the intent for it to be used in economic gain. And it is the intentional stereotype in many examples in American culture. The Washington Redskins, books, movies, and songs, the Atlantic Braves and the Florida State University, they use the tomahawk, and that really involves the audience to sing along, and they portray the Indians as savages, and they use that stereotype in their motto and like slang. Not slang, I can't think of the word, I'm sorry. Cultural confusion is also sometimes confused with cultural misappropriation. Cultural confusion is just the lack of knowledge when dealing with Native Americans, and is like the false information that has been spread through entertainment and stories. It calls attention to what is authentic information, and it like attacks the racial comments and the misinformation. And it's like the lack of consensus about what is proper or appropriate when dealing with Native American culture, and is the inaccurate stereotypes that continue to build on this aspect. It is like playing cowboys and Indians when we were growing up, like the school plays that we were part of as dressed up as Indians, and also the basic Halloween costumes like dressing up as Pocahontas, that is singing Red Face. And that has gone with cultural confusion when misappropriating American Indian culture. A prime example for cultural confusion was Cher's song, Half-Breed. It used that native-esque sounding music mixed with the American pop culture of her usual songs. With this, they also like were really empathetic, and they tried to sympathize with the Native Americans, and it idealized sympathy was sympathy for an imaginary Native American caricature, and the issues voiced the misrepresentation of becoming clearly visible. They use the stereotypes in like, for lack of better wording, an apology and a sympathetic tone. In the song Indian Reservation as a prime example, as they still use the stereotypes of the Cherokee people in the song when trying to be more sympathetic. Basically, this is my works cited sheet, and so these topics in terms were the ones that mainly misappropriated American Indian culture by popular American music. And I hope you enjoyed my presentation.